The Dublin Fire Brigade provides emergency ambulance services in Dublin by arrangement between Dublin City Council, the National Ambulance Service and the HSE. In short, the Dublin Fire Brigade provides a fire-based ambulance service. International best practice indicates that combining fire rescue and emergency services greatly improves the response to a crisis, particularly in this age of international terrorism. The Chief Executive of Dublin City Council, Owen Keegan, wants to see a transfer of all call-taking and dispatching for ambulances to the National Central Control Centre in Tallaght. This would be a major mistake. Yes, problems were identified in the HICWA report published in December 2014. There were concerns about the existence of two separate control and dispatch processes. We are now at an impasse on this issue. The report of the expert panel on the pre-hospital emergency care services in Dublin 2015 provides the solution. Moving the call and dispatch service to Tallaght from Townsend Street is not acceptable to the Dublin Fire Brigade. A technical solution to bring about the required coordination is possible. This would cost only about €10,000 to €20,000 and should be trialled. A transfer to Tallaght would end the fire-based emergency ambulance service and the benefits of such a service. The practical solution is to provide terminals in both call-out centres. This would replace the existing telephone contact arrangements. It would show both emergency services, the location and availability of ambulances, and would ensure that the nearest available ambulance is identified. There is another issue, Minister. The Dublin Fire Brigade has not been provided with the necessary ambulance capacity to respond to 36,000 emergency calls in 2016. The Dublin Fire Brigade only has 12 ambulances, and that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, my colleague has outlined the reason both of us and our party firmly support the Dublin Fire Brigade and the provision of ambulance services for Dublin, because it works, and it works very well. 99% satisfaction rating in the last survey. Now, what I want to put to you specifically, Minister, is that the external review carried out and the report carried out by HICWA, I believe that the report is fundamentally flawed. And I believe it's fundamentally flawed because one of the members of the external review team didn't declare a conflict of interest in carrying out this report. The conflict of interest being is that individual is also a board member of the Association of Ambulance's Chief Executive, AACE, which is a UK firm which is also contracted to the HSE, which is contracted to the HSE and provided advice to the National Ambulance Service. So all of this leads in this direction. Now, Minister, what I want to specifically say to you as well, in the day where we're discussing parliamentary questions not being answered, on the 17th of October, I tabled 3 parliamentary questions to the Minister for Health, asking to outline the procurement process entered into by the HSE on the granting of this contract to AACE UK Limited. I also asked about the conflict of interest and what references they sought in relation to the individuals, and in particular one individual, Mr Ken Wenman, who was a board member and a member of the external review team. And also, I want to ask the Minister for Health about the payments made to an organisation in each year in respect of its engagement by the HSE. Now, that was put forward on the 17th of October, and on the 17th of October, I obviously got a reply from the Minister saying the issues raised are operational. I've referred to the HSE to respond to you. I've had no response since at all. The HICWA report, the external review, is absolutely flawed because it teed up to give Dublin City Council and the HSE the answers that they want to undermine the work of the Dublin Fire Brigade.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of Minister Harris, I will be taking this topical issue and to thank the deputies for their concerns and the issue that was raised this evening. Dublin Fire Brigade provide emergency ambulance services in Dublin City and County by arrangements between Dublin City Council and the HSE. The National Ambulance Service provides a non-emergency patient transfer in the Greater Dublin area and also provides some emergency capacity in this area. I understand that the last year, in response to increased service pressures, the National Ambulance Services have provided additional emergency capacity in Dublin. In recent years, 3 comprehensive reviews of our ambulance service has been undertaken. The HICWA review, the capacity review and a review of Dublin Ambulance Service, which was jointly commissioned by the HSE and Dublin City Council. Capacity review published published last year, examined overall ambulances resources level and distribution against demand and activities. The review identified a requirement for additional emergency resources, primarily comprising of rapid response vehicles in the eastern region, including Dublin. As I mentioned earlier, the National Ambulance Service has put in place additional emergency resources in Dublin, including rapid response vehicles, to address the capacity deficit. In 2014, HICRA report on ambulance services highlighted some operational inefficiencies between the National Ambulance Service and Dublin Fire Brigade and recommended a number of measures to improve operations. I am pleased to draw to the attention of the House to a follow-up to the review by HICRA early this year, which noted that communications, operations and coordination between the National Ambulance Services and Dublin Fire Brigade have improved significantly since 2014. A review of Dublin Ambulance Services was commissioned by Dublin County Council and the HSE some time ago and focused on identifying a service model for the most effective and efficient provision of emergency ambulance services and patients' care in the Dublin region. Its primary objective was to determine the optimal model of ambulance services provided, which will ensure that patients receive the highest standard of emergency response, and to determine the most cost-effective service which would ensure optimal value for money for the public purse. However, the issue of Dublin Ambulance Services provided is currently subject of mediation process between Dublin City Council and staff associations. In these circumstances, I am not in a position, nor will it be appropriate to make any comments on funding arrangements that are in place, or should it be in place between Dublin City Council and the HSE. I can, however, confirm that additional funding will be made available for the continued development of pre-hospital emergency care services in 2018, the additional funding for the HSE for specific service developments around the country must await the finalisation of the National Service Plan, and I can assure the House that this process is currently underway. Finally, I note that the National Ambulance Service recently won an ESAI Substantial Emergency Award for energy efficiency in their new vehicles. These vehicles include features such as solar panels and other energy mechanisms. I am advised that 5 of these new vehicles have been assigned to the Dublin Fire Brigade, and I will come back in on some of the issues the deputies raised.
Minister. Sean High. 1 minute this time.
The Government must provide a minimum of 4 additional ambulances and the consequent funding to the Dublin Fire Brigade immediately so that it can respond to the ever-increasing number of emergencies and incidents in Dublin. The Dublin Fire Brigade personnel are also trained paramedics. If you go with the changes proposed by the Chief Executive of Dublin City Council, a skill set will be lost forever. At present, a fire brigade can also be sent out with an ambulance with trained paramedics on board. This is a safety issue and is in the best interests of the public and patient safety generally. Sadly, terrorist attacks are now a major threat in EU states. Other EU states are now moving to this concept of a fire-based ambulance service. It would be a shame if we were now to break up something that is actually working. Minister, please ask your Senior Minister to give the local authority appropriate funding and resources to continue to provide this service. This issue has dragged on long enough and it needs to be sorted out once and for all.
Deputy Donald O'Brien.
Yeah, I would say at the outset, Minister, as well, is that I am disappointed. This is the second time we've raised this issue, and on neither occasion has the Senior Minister for Health, Simon Harris, actually attended to take this. My colleague, and we have outlined in our initial statements, our full support of the DFB and DFB Ambulance. I would say, I want to put on the record, the work of the National Ambulance Service is exceptional also. But the report, the HICRA report that you referred to, is absolutely flawed. It's absolutely flawed because of the individuals who undertook the work to complete that report had a clear conflict of interest. And I've mentioned exactly why that is, because they're employed by the HSE to provide other services, and that was not declared. Why can't I get an answer to those 3 parliamentary questions that I tabled on the 17th of October, which ask about the public procurement process of this company, AACE UK Limited? I have no answer in 6 weeks on 3 questions, because I believe they were appointed to give the HSE, the NAS and DCC the answers that they actually wanted. And that is not acceptable. You're a Dublin deputy as well, Minister. You know the work the DFB do and the DFB ambulance crew, and this is an absolute divvy-up. And this should not be accepted. And I would ask you to give a commitment that Minister Simon Harris comes in and addresses this issue at least once. This is the second time we've raised it in 6 months.
And Talis Dodge.
Chair, well, I'm fully aware of the service that Dublin Fire Brigade provide in our city through the council, and I'm a long-standing fan of theirs since the time I was Lord Mayor, and the service that they provided to the Lord Mayor at the time as well. I will take all the issues that have been raised by both deputies back to the Minister. Unfortunately, he can't be here this evening. of no fault of his own. He has something else that he had to leave for. So I will raise the following issues that you have brought about the procurement and about the 3 questions that were put in place on the 17th of October, and I will ask him to reply personally to both of you, if that's okay with you this evening. Okay.
Thank you. Minister, I now